Peter, what's happening, man?
Hold on.
What?
Well, I gotta fix my.
Oh, you look fabulous, you handsome devil, you.
I need to.
What's happening, man?
Not much. I just finished up a meeting here, so I'm in my I have my sport coat on the back of the door, and I'm here
Yeah,
now.
you're one of those few people that still kind of wears the whole suit thing, being a financial planner and everything, huh?
When I have meetings, yes. Otherwise,
Yes.
I dress comfortably, which dress shoes and my old feet don't go well together. So I usually more comfortable shoes and not such a tight collar on my shirt.
Well, we'll get to your career in a second, but we got to start off with the important stuff. Kristen, Charlie, Cecily,
Yes.
Josie, talk to me.
Yeah, thank you for starting with them first because some of these type of interviews I've done in recent years, Kristen will watch and she's like, you never mentioned me until like the 30-minute marker.
Well, I have her back because I have nothing but the biggest admiration for her, settling for your tired ass. No.
Settling, yes. Definitely outkicked my coverage. So yes, they're all good. When people ask about the family, one, it's with three kids. So again, Kristen and I now are married. Let's see, it'll be 13 years in September. But Charlie's 10 years old, Cecily is 7 years old, and Josephine is 4. So again, what's
What?
that?
Where did the nickname Bucci come from?
They all have nicknames, but Charlie is a very creative young man.
I can tell.
And so Kristen and I were just sitting in our living room one morning when Charlie was like 3 years old and Cecily was just like a 6-month old. And so we were pointing at everybody and saying, who's that? That's daddy. Who's that? That's mommy. And then we pointed at Cecily, his younger sister, and Charlie just said, "Oh, well, that's Bucci."
Got it. And now, for the rest of her life, even after she gets married, she will be Bucci. And Josie, is that the nickname, or does she have a nickname also?
Oh, she's got plenty. So she goes by JoJo. She goes by Mudget. Mudget is probably the similar story that Charlie just made it up. He yelled at her one day, just said, "Stop it, you Mudget." So like almost sounds like a midget, but a Mudget.
So Charlie is in charge of nicknames.
Yes.
I guess that's, what, as the oldest, I think it's his right.
Yeah, no, he's earned it.
Yeah. And he's the jujitsu master, I see.
They are very active in all kinds of interests and hobbies and activities. But a friend of mine said Charlie might be interested in jujitsu because my friend has been doing jujitsu for 5 years or so. Anytime Charlie would meet up with my buddy Evan, he would just naturally cling and kind of wrestle with Evan. And eventually, it was 2020, so it's exactly about 3 years ago that we took Charlie to a jujitsu class. He actually had the choice of basketball or jujitsu, and he said he wanted to give jujitsu a try because he had played basketball, in the fall of 2019, and he liked it and had fun. But he has loved jujitsu, and Cecily now does it too, and Josie. So all three of them have been doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which it's been I think it's such an interesting. If I were given the access to such a school like they have when I was a kid, I think I would have loved it.
Right, and it seems like very soon all three of them are going to be kicking your ass. Is what it sounds like.
They already do, both physically and mentally and spiritually.
Oh, but they got to be the best. That's the one thing I'm missing out on. I love to live vicariously through my friends' kids.
It's a daily adventure. It is a challenge, especially when they're really young. It's like, oh my gosh, go to sleep or just stop.
Right.
Whatever.
Constant energy and no sleep. Right.
Yeah. Oh, sleep. I mean, I definitely had so many years of, hey, I can take a nap after morning practice. I have my summers off. I can sleep until 10 a.m. whenever I want to wake up. I am now paying the price for all those years of having control over my sleep patterns.
And it seems like maybe I might be wrong. And Charlie's really the only one I've met who was in a formative years, but he seems like quite the the character and the ham. There may be some kind of Hollywood TV gig in his future.
They all have a little bit of a performance spirit.
Uh,
I have some videos that are probably again, I don't want my kids being on YouTube and those types of things, but
right.
we always say, like, if we had a reality TV crew following, especially the 4-year-old Josie, she is such a little ham. But yeah, Cecily, she'll take the fake microphone and stand in front of us in the living room and do
Got it. Oh, so they all have the gift.
yeah, and you might ask my parents and my older siblings. I think I was a bit of a clown when I was a kid too.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, your first on-air gig with me. I mean, it's a classic that lives on YouTube forever.
Oh,
You,
the Penn State basketball story.
yeah, you and all your acne glory.
I was still struggling. It took until I turned 19, I still had problems. But
So let's talk about the recruiting process. Well, no, let's go back to high school. You are the same age as my brother Troy, and I think you guys were running around in the same kind of circles and maybe played against each other in the slam dunk at the beach. Is that right?
That's right. Slam dunk to the beach down in Delaware. Yeah, I mean, high school, I was a starter on the varsity when I was a freshman. So you could say I lucked into it a little bit. I'm the tallest one in my family. I don't want to give too much credit to my work ethic, but I worked at it, and I was blessed with some height and good eyesight and hand-eye coordination. But by the time I was a sophomore, I was really getting recruiting letters. I mean, even before I entered high school, I had played in the 14 and under AAU tournament down in New Orleans, and I started getting letters. So I had my first ever letter was from William and Mary. I mean, just a weird maybe school to get a letter from. But the next day, I got one from Syracuse. I got one from Providence. I remember, again, I had not even stepped foot into high school yet, and so I think it was because I had done well at that AAU tournament there. Who knows? Maybe it was just some form letters that
was so big, man. AAU. I didn't have an AAU team. Ours folded because guys weren't showing up. But yeah, I'm sure that had a direct effect on you got so much exposure.
AAU back then was different. AAU was because you were considered one of the better players of a region, not just your town. Like we took the best players from our entire area, and we did well at the Philadelphia qualifier, and we won it. So we beat the city teams from Philadelphia. We beat some South Jersey teams. So again, we qualified for the national tournament. Then you fast forward to my sophomore year, we got to the state quarterfinals. We lost to the eventual state champions. But in those 3 state PIAA state title or state playoff games, I think I averaged like 25 points a game. So as a sophomore, I put myself on the map there. And then I had gone to the 5-star camp. I had been trying to see where was I on the national level, or again, start regionally and go from there.
Right.
And
as we all were.
Yeah, like everybody can be. You're the best one in your family. You're the best one on your block. Well, then it's like, all right, well, are you that good? And you got to push yourself. And so, thankfully, my older siblings were role models for me. I saw what they had gone through and to what level they got in terms of athletics. And so, my parents were very supportive to say, look, if you want to try this, let's go for it. And especially when I got invited to play in the D'Onofrio Classic. So that's a tournament they play down in Conshohocken every spring. It's like every May, I want to say. I played in that, and against Rasheed Wallace's team, I had like 37. So when I did that, and they're in that tiny little gym in Conshohocken, there were, I remember seeing PJ Carlissimo, Bobby Cremens. There were at that time a lot of big name coaches were there, and I did that. So that got me on the map, I really think.
What's interesting is, like I was a Garnett fan when he played, but I've become a bigger Garnett fan now. And I watched his documentary, Anything is Possible. And when he's talking about the tournament with Shea Cotton and Paul Pierce, you were playing in that tournament.
Yeah, you know what? I have to watch that because I was there at the Nike camp when nobody knew who Garnett was. And in the first few days, he was loud. He was like very like outgoing. Like, who is this guy? And he was killing everybody.
Yeah. He was. I can't believe you haven't seen it.
I have to watch. I have to watch that. You said Shea Cotton. I have to watch Shea Cotton. Shea reached out to me before it came out to say, "Hey, you got to watch it." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll get to it." I got 3 kids, Brian. So, there's a few things on my list. One is to watch Garnett's, and yes, like I played against those guys, but that's the thing. Like throughout my high school years, it was, all right, where am I, and where do I think I need to get to or want to get to? I was MVP of that slam dunk to the beach tournament down in Delaware that your brother would have played at. I know that, yeah, South Lakes, right? That was your high school too. So that's where Joey Beard went, and he was also a good player for Duke.
Grant.
Yep. So again, I think, yeah, Grant Hill, of course. So there's a process to it. I'm lucky I didn't get any major injuries, and I had good grades. So it was I think I was a no risk recruit for a lot of schools, but then again, I could shoot, and so that's where I was being recruited.
Yes, I believe it's called shoot the shit out of it. Whitehall's finest. So the process of selecting Penn State, tell me about that.
Well, yeah, like I said, starting in freshman year of high school, it was like, wow, I'm gonna have a lot of options. Like, what do I want? And that's definitely what my older siblings and my parents said. Hey, think about what you want. Do I want to stay close to home? Do I want to play for a powerhouse? Do I want to go to a national title contender? Like Duke, North Carolina, Kansas. And I got recruited by those schools. I had letters. I have letters still, from Bobby Knight's recruiting letters, and
I don't think either one of us would have done well there.
No,
I know what I don't want.
I'm very hard on myself, believe that or not. I think a certain coaching style does work with me. I don't need to be coddled. I can be criticized. I can take coaching. You can ask Kristen. I can take coaching. But the idea was, yeah, all the dials. What type of coach? What type of system? What type of tradition? Or with Penn State, it was to start a tradition. And nothing against the older guys at Penn State like you, but you guys started something of a successful program, yet it was transitioning to the Big Ten. That was the big, kind of shiny appeal and sizzle to it that, I had Villanova, I had Duke, I had Florida, I had UCLA and Stanford. Those were my top schools. And then there was Penn State. But Penn State was the first school when I was a sophomore. Bruce Parkhill I called him. You weren't allowed to call me. My dad said, "Hey, let's call Penn State. Let's just check it out." And my dad was very influential in kind of like guiding me. He said, let's think about it. And I remember Bruce saying, "Look, Pete, you got a scholarship here. If you tear your ACL next year, we still want you." And when he said that,
he honored that. Like there'd be times where he'd say, if you don't want to be on the team, just don't come to the gym. I'm not going to take your scholarship because I'm not that guy, but I don't want you wasting our time either. So I believe, like, if he said that, he meant it.
Yeah. And look, I only really got to know Bruce once I was actually there, but he struck me as honest. And I really respected that, where a lot of other coaches, let's just say, I think it's fair for me to not use names, but of those schools I mentioned, there were coaches that were slick salesmen. They were just salesmen. And I was like, you know what? He's telling me what he's telling everybody.
Right. And you can feel that. You can taste it. Who's your host, by the way?
Who was my host?
Do you remember?
Initially, I took an unofficial visit. They had played Miami and lost. And I remember leaving Beaver Stadium, and the entire stadium was dead silent. I was like, "Oh, this is no good." But who hosted me on that? Maybe Gaudio.
That sounds right.
Maybe Gaudio, and then Danny was my host, I think, for my official visit. But I had already.
He was a big factor in you deciding on Penn State, right?
Oh, for sure. So Danny and I played against each other and with each other on teams and in various events, tournaments, camps. But I played with Brevin Knight. I played with different guys that I thought, man, I would play with that guy again. Johnny Miller was from Solanco High School in Lancaster. I loved playing with Johnny. He went to Temple and Clemson. There was different guys I played with in high school. I just said, you know what? I'm not the kind of guy that you just give me the ball and I'll figure it out. I need somebody to work with me. The way I move, I know how to read a defense. I know how to play hide and seek. I know how to use screens. Again, I know how to be on a string with a good point guard, and to be where he knows I'm going to be there if you need me, and vice versa as we move together, penetrating, kicking, whatever it may be, especially on offense, because who cares about defense? But yeah, Danny, man, I always respected him. I remember him, just kind of following him. We went to the Nike camp and ended up talking a little bit because remembered him from the Sunny Hill League and that type of thing. But I just remember thinking when he signed with Penn State, I thought, man, that's a parade All-American. They were considered the national champions of the
Shawnee High School, right?
Shawnee High School, because they beat Simon Gratz. They beat everybody. They were the #1 team in the United States. They had Malik Allen, who played in the NBA, but he was only a freshman at the time. They had Brian Earl, Danny's brother, who's now the coach at Cornell. So they had a legitimate team that Danny was the lead player, and he's going to Penn State, and that was influential for sure.
Well, yeah, I just remember you guys being, really some of the first ones that were getting so much hype, because I was never a big fan of following recruits or commits because
it wasn't as easy to follow. In the old days, you had to subscribe to a recruiting service and get
right. Yeah, it's just the leap from high school to college can be so overwhelming for some kids. It's like I'll get attached to them once they're here. So sure. I just remember that you and Danny were some of those, because I was still around. Some of those top recruits that they wanted, and I was very much like you, thinking it doesn't have a tradition, but I'd love to at least try to start one. And you guys were able to take us to that next level. So the first time the Fab Five walk into Rec Hall, talk about that.
Well, your historical perspective may be a little off. By the time I was a freshman, it was just Jimmy King and Ray Jackson.
Right.
And look, Juwan Howard was a counselor at the Nike camp, so I got to see him, spend time with him. I remember watching them when they were all freshmen and just being, they're the reason that my shorts were so long in high school and college, which I didn't like, by the way. I'm much more of a John Stockton, I don't want
because they were 92 and you graduated in 94 from high school. So exactly. you're right behind, right.
So if I remember correctly, Weber went first,
yes.
and Juwan, but that maybe also who was the third guy? Jalen.
Yeah.
So I miss playing against those guys, but I will say my freshman year playing against Michigan, Jimmy King and Ray Jackson, first of all, both about 6'5", so a little bigger than me, and also that Jimmy was a little more fast and slippery, where Ray was just going to he posted me up and beat the crap out of me. I was like,
there's always that moment, and I don't know, it could happen the first game, it could happen, but it's like I'm in a different level.
They're grown men. I still had my acne to deal with.
Right. Oh, real quick, going back though, there was one guy that in high school that you kind of had that moment with too, right? That may have been from the Chesapeake area.
You talking about AI?
Yes, sir.
Well, there's all kinds of guys over the years that, I just remember seeing, certain plays will always stay in my memory of going against Rasheed Wallace. Like the first time you see him just go over everybody and you're like, oh man, that guy's on a different level. I remember Donald Foyle, if you remember Donald Foyle.
Yeah. He was at Colgate, right?
He was at Colgate. He played in the NBA a long time.
Yep.
He and I were AAU teammates a few times. And I just remember like giving him a lob, and when he dunked it, it felt like the entire gym, like the roof was going to come down. It was so powerful, right? So again, you get to different levels of basketball. My experience anyway. You could say maybe about football or other sports, the speed, the strength, the quickness of certain players. AI. So I met him the first time I went to the Nike camp. So we were both rising sophomores. So we were going to be juniors the next season. Our team won the camp that week. So my team, though, was the underclassmen. So we were the second five. The first five was Rasheed Wallace, Alvin Williams, Jeff Shepard from Kentucky.
Oh, yeah. He could shoot the shit out of the ball, too.
Who was on the starting? A guy named Chuck Gillette, who played at Syracuse and DePaul, and one other guy that is probably a really big name that I'm forgetting. But on my team, it was AI and I were the backcourt. And then Keontae Roberts, who was a very good player at Oklahoma State, BJ Williams, who was a nice role player at Kansas, and then Alex Frazier was a big man at Miami of Florida. So so maybe Alex Frazier was on the starting five. We had Mark Blount from Pitt.
Oh yeah,
on my five. The center, he also played in the NBA. So that's our Nike camp roster. And the first night of practice, I'm guarding AI, and the coaches are kind of walking us through what plays we're going to try to run or kind of sets. And they say, okay, let's run it live. And they come to do a ball screen on AI, and my teammate says, pick right. I just turned my head, and I came back like that. He was gone. I was like, where the hell did he come? Just boom.
That dude was different.
Yeah. So his from start to go, like from 0 to 60, but also he has super long arms that more than once that week. And I have some video that I put up on YouTube of my mom, came and recorded the games at Indianapolis at the venue, but that there's more than one time where I threw him an alley-oop from like, not just right next to him, like from the hash mark, like a
right.
And he caught it and dunked it. So you're like a 6'1" guy, the things that he was doing, you're like, all right, this guy's pretty good.
Yeah. I got to see him play against my brother a couple times. And I can't remember, it must have been in the state tournament or something.
Well, he was from Hampton.
Yeah. And us up in South Lakes, we were at Northern Virginia, a suburban school, and we go down there and usually just get it handed to us. So the big leap, my first memory is, because I was announcing games at the time with Steve Jones, and we're in Atlantic City, and you just roll up and drop 9 threes on them. Who was it? Penn?
Penn.
Yeah. And
who had Ira Bowman, who was a future NBA player, and I think they had one.
What do you remember about that? Like, what do you? Because obviously,
first thing I remember about Atlantic City, and all the guys from the team will back me up on this, was the clam chowder at the hotel. The clam chowder at the hotel was so good.
It's the little things.
We had it like, when we got into town the night before the game, and we're like, man, that thing was good. But you can't eat soup before a game, right? So we didn't have it at the pregame meal. But we knew that we weren't going back to State College until the next day. So back at the hotel post game, everybody said, "Can we get that clam chowder again?" And they did, and we killed it, for our post game meal. But what do I remember about the game? Well, first of all, that the Atlantic City Convention Center is a very cavernous place to play. But that one, I didn't have a problem with it. I don't know what it is. It's just lock in on the rim, block everything else out. But like guys during shoot around that morning before the game were shooting air balls. Yeah.
I remember.
You know what? Look, nobody's taken the time to do it, but I bet if you did some type of scientific experiment on it, there's got to be something with your eyesight. I didn't have a problem with it. And I am the only one in my family of, let's say, 10. So my parents and my 7 siblings. I'm the only one that doesn't wear glasses. And I think there is something to that my eyes, I can focus in on something, and I'm a little bit better at saying, okay, I'm going to hit that target. So in that game, and I also have this on YouTube because my mom taped the game and I uploaded it.
Denana, tell her and your dad I said hello, by the way.
I will. Danny shot an air ball on a free throw.
I don't remember that.
He shot an air ball on a free throw, and in the same game, Phil Williams made both of his free throws.
Oh, well, see, that's a bizarre world right there.
So what's going on? So anyway, back to the convention center, cavernous. That year we had high hopes, but it's like, hey, Penn's pretty good. Let's be ready for this game. So I was hyped up for it. And so I just was getting open and making shots. And then I was not open and I still made shots. So,
right. By that time, it was like throwing a rock in the ocean. Like you were,
yeah. It was good. But
and then you were like 9 and 10, weren't you? It was like a ridiculous.
I was 9 for 10, and the one that I missed, I should have made. I was wide open. And so I should have made that. But I scored 35 and I didn't go to the free throw line. So that also tells you something.
Yeah, you knew your role, and it was hanging out there by the 3-point line, coming off of Phil Williams screens, locking and loading. Daddy would get it to you in your pocket. Boom.
Well, even though Coach Dunn was in his first year, we were still running the motion offense from Coach Parker, which was don't dribble unless you're going to try to go to the basket. So if you're adjusting your passing angle for an inlet pass to the post, that's one thing. But I think I was just going along with the offense. When I play in the summertime down Sunny Hill or AAU stuff, yeah, okay, some of the guys might joke that my handle wasn't as good as others, but I can dribble. I played point guard in Europe. So
Right.
anyway, the idea was our offense was based on movement, but not over dribbling. And so I think if you were to count up my dribbles in that game, I had less dribbles than I had points for sure.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then you also had another. You had like a streak, and I got to give a shout out to Mark Brennan because he's actually the one that pointed this out. Was it 39 consecutive free throws?
Well,
Is that right?
Yeah. As I remember it, I had 39 in a row and I had 33. So I had two different streaks. And both my junior and senior year, I was number one in the country in free throw percentage throughout the season. And then in like the last two games, I missed like 3, 4, 5 free throws.
So you're going after Craig Collins' record, huh? Were you aware
Right.
of that?
Well, he shot like 95%.
Yeah.
He
Well,
shot ridiculous.
yeah.
I shot 90, right?
Yeah, you're only in the 90s.
Well, I remember we used to do competitions in practice, and I could get up until whoever I was going against would fall out. I could get into the 80s or the 90s in a row.
Oh, I believe that. I totally believe that. Yeah, the shot was pure and it was wet. And you know, the reason I brought up Mark Brennan because he did a thing that was really cool on 10 Penn State records that won't be broken. One was your 9 threes and one was your 39 in a row. Have you seen this year's team? I think your 9 in a game might be in jeopardy this year.
Well, you got to start off with, apples to apples. In my day,
wow, those words just came out of your mouth. All right.
You know, it wasn't as in vogue. It wasn't as in fashion to shoot the three like it is.
No
today.
question.
Like, gosh, if I watch today, and I know when I go and play pickup ball, which I don't do as much anymore, I'm getting old. But when I play at the gym, like guys are leaving me open. It's like, yeah, I'm going to shoot threes all day because I'm going to make more than half of these if you leave me open. And that's a more efficient way of scoring.
Yes.
Where now though, like if you give me a lane for a layup, I'm going to go take the layup. And when I play in these pickup games and I watch college and NBA, guys will have a layup and they'll throw it back out for a 3.
Right.
And that's an extreme that even I don't agree with.
Right. You don't adhere to. Yeah. It's the purity. You're a purist. I get it.
Well, it's a reflection of efficiency and it's a reflection of where the game has gotten to. So I thought of, hey, I want to be efficient. I don't want to take bad shots. That was a Bruce Parkhill, especially. Like, don't take bad shots. So if I took a 3, it was, hey, it's a good shot. I'm open. And if one of my teammates takes a 3, it's because we know he can make it and he's open. Nowadays, you see guys jacking 3s early in the shot clock that are not 3-point shooters or they're covered. And to me, it's gotten too far in the wrong direction. I'm okay with shooting 3s and the trend of having 4 guys that can shoot and drive and kick it out, and then that 5th guy is just a roving rebounder, picker, dive, or also pop out for 3s. So 4 out. That's what everybody's running nowadays. And that's how we used to play in the summertime. Danny and I used to play with Jared and other guys down in Philly at the Pro-Am. We'd play 4 out, 1 in. Once in a while, we'd dump it into the post, but it was 3s and drive and kick. 3s, drive and kick. Use the threat of the 3 to draw them out and then drive by and either get to the basket all the way or kick it out for somebody else to try the same thing.
Yeah. Well, Chef Curry's changed the game. He's definitely changed the game. I love watching him. Don't get me wrong. I love watching
those guys did. I look, they're doing things that I in the 90s and early 2000s, for me, that was like, hey, that's the way I think is a great way to play basketball. Trying to dump it into Patrick Ewing, trying to dump it into Shaq, that's fine, but it's a grind. It's a lot of pain. But going back to the team this year, they got guys that can make it. They got guys that shoot it. Like you got to put up the attempts if you want to try to get to that 9.
Right.
I'm surprised. Yeah, Shep maybe got 7 or 8 in a game.
Shep being the one who actually broke your long-standing record
career. But he played in 20 more games.
Oh, right.
He played in 20 more
Well,
games.
records are made to be broken, Peter.
That's all. No problem. No problem on that. I will give you, while we're on a recorded line here. So I have this, somebody please go fact check me on this. I made 330 some threes in my career. Maybe 327, something like that. Then my younger brother, Gabe, played at East Tennessee State. He made, let's say, like 80 threes. Then our oldest brother, Jack, played at University of Scranton, Division III, but NCAA basketball.
Right.
He made like 40 threes. And then our sister, Mary, played at Georgetown. She made like 250 or so. When you add up our siblings' three-point total, we have more than the two Curry brothers. And I think it's possible as siblings, we may have the most threes of all time.
I love that. I love that record.
Somebody fact check me on this.
You know what? I'm going to assign Uncle Larry to that. That is right up
Larry on this, because the Barry brothers, we beat them. They were, at the start of the 3-point line.
Right.
For sure, at the beginning there were people that shot the three, but it wasn't still like incorporated until Pitino really pushed it.
Yeah.
At where did he do it? New York, and then Kentucky and Boston.
Right. Westhead a little. He kind of was.
Westhead played fast, yes, but that he was coaching
Loyola Marymount.
Yeah, and
they put up a lot of threes
too. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that was the first team to take advantage of the three, because we're old enough that wasn't there our first year.
That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. How about that?
I remember.
Yeah. So non-basketball related as it applies to Penn State, when I think of you, I also intertwine it. Obviously, you were academic, all Big Ten and all that. You were about to embrace. I think about Sandy Meyer, like,
of course.
Yeah, like the influence that she had on you and all the guys. But for whatever reason, and maybe you would never take credit for this, but during COVID, I remember you reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, can you check on Sandy for me?" So she obviously was very influential in your.
Well, look, I think that's one of the things about my Penn State experience is, people ask me why Penn State, and they only want to focus on the basketball stuff. But one of those dials that my parents and my older siblings were talking about was go to a school where, that the education is valued, and not just by the school, but also by the coaching staff. And so I felt like that was the case. Like they graduated 100% of their players at that time. It was something that they were proud of. They were proud of not having any NCAA compliance infractions. And so again, I felt like there was a lot of things in place for Penn State. But when I talk about my experience at Penn State, I made a lot of great friends on the basketball team. I made a lot of great friends in my classroom situations. To this day, I keep in touch and have friends that I work with or just see in passing here in Phoenix or wherever. But man, Sandy Meyer was our academic advisor, and she was given a certain amount of leeway in terms of how she dealt with us. I would put it like that. So, certain players she had to be harder on. With me, she knew she just needed to be there if I needed her.
Something. Yeah, you had the foundation.
And so, man, like throughout my years, it didn't matter what it might have been, especially if it was academics. Of course, that was her main focus. But sometimes where she was in Buki building, it was on my way in between two classes that had a break in between them. And I would take a nap in her office. She had this like fold out cushion seat that you could make it like a food, that I could lay out a little. And she would say, all right. And she would leave her office and turn off the light so I could take a nap.
Oh, and naps are so big. Oh,
it's
man.
So big. I was always tired.
Naps.
I was always tired.
Naps. You had to be mentally prepared.
You wake up for 7 a.m. With Chip Harrison, at the weight room. And then you got the class at 8:05 or whatever.
Always had 8 a.m.
breakfast. You got to try to eat, because if you don't eat, you're going to be losing weight and you'd be tired even more. Throughout, especially my freshman year, every hour of every day I had to be somewhere, and it was very tiring. And just that option to go all the way back to West Halls or go all the way to my Nittany apartment, where she was in Buki, but I was like, man, I have a place I can just take a 30-minute nap.
Right. And the cookies and Sandy came after me essentially, so I didn't have the pleasure of Sandy. I mean, I had Dr. who was great, but Sandy definitely, as an older guy observing, she was a key piece to all of you guys, I think. A part of your.
She helped everybody in different ways, right? Like just obviously with scheduling, with getting ready for exams that were being taken away, on away trips. But as the years have gone on, it's decades now. Time flies. But what I would say is the friendships that I made with people, not just with the basketball team, but around the basketball team and around Penn State, those are the ones that I really treasure and value the most. To this day, I'm in contact with Sandy almost every week. That there's something that'll pop up that I know she would appreciate, right?
Yes.
Or that she could be a sounding board on, or get the joke, or the the situational topic. So yeah,
because there's so much that goes on outside the games that's not seen or observed that are so key and crucial. And she was there for all of it. Like I said, I was more of an observer because I was,
she would have Thanksgiving available to the kids who couldn't go back to, I could drive back to Whitehall. Some of our players couldn't, so she'd make Thanksgiving dinner. Over the years, she just was there, obviously for the hat that she wore as our academic advisor, but just as a great person that was there to help us with anything.
So much more than that. I didn't want to talk to you without talking about Sandy and giving her some flowers.
All American is Sandy Meyer in my book.
There you go. The under 22 USA team. Tell me about that experience.
Oh, I mean, that's one of the pinnacles of my basketball career. Not that it was, I'd say some of the teams I played for in Europe were the highest level of, continuous, but for where that was at that time, they only chose 15 players to stay on the team. So I went out for tryouts at Colorado Springs at the training center. I think they invited maybe 40 or 45 guys. And, I didn't know if I had a chance, but I had a really good sophomore year. And so Calvin Booth and I were both invited. And so there was a lot of, future NBA Hall of Famers that were there that didn't make it. So AI was one that didn't, he didn't get chosen. And there's some politics that get into it. Like they're trying to build a team. So they're trying to say, we want the kind of players that we want.
And this is the team now, for context, this is, like right after the dream team. This is the next team.
This would have been the Olympic team previous to 1992. That's right. So in essence, I was invited to try out for what would have been the Olympic team before 1992. And I had a great 3 days. Like I made everything that I threw up there. Again, I played with Cameron Dollar. I played with different guys that knew how to find me. Mm-hmm. And in those type of situations, guys aren't playing, I think, the best defense. So I'm getting open. If I'm open, I'm going to make it.
Right.
So that 3-day experience, I made everything. And the coach was Mike Montgomery from Stanford. So I mentioned Stanford was one of my schools that I was looking at strong. And, it's far away from home. And I just said, you know what, I'm going with Penn State. So I didn't really have bad relationship, saying that I wasn't coming to Stanford. So I think they liked me from recruiting me, but that I fit in with what they were looking for. They knew that they were going to play against zone in the competitions. So I got chosen. It was, again, 15 guys, 12 out of the 15 guys played in the NBA. So the first guy is Tim Duncan. Everybody knows Tim Duncan, but then it was Paul Pierce. It was Brevin Knight, Lewis Bullock, who you remember at Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan. Yeah.
What's his name? Gosh, I could go and get the whole roster, but Chauncey Billups was also a very big part of that team. So again, I think the fact that I made it was great, but then the practices, I was in it. Like I was somebody that they had to guard. For my confidence was like, I can hang, and these guys are the best in the country.
Right.
So, what it came down to was not to get too big of a head about it. I learned, like, again, we go one-on-one with Chauncey and with other guys. Corey Carr from Texas Tech, who's really good on defense, was like, the things I need to work on. That's what I pulled away from.
Right. Creating your own shot.
I'm forgetting the big experience of we played against the Dream Team. So that was on NBC. I was guarding Reggie Miller. I was guarding Mitch Richmond. And at one point, Scottie Pippen was guarding me and lost me. And I was open and I missed. I was short, right in the middle of the rim.
Because you could have told Charlie. You could have told Charlie this.
I got it and I was open, but I leaned back like a fall away, and I didn't need to. I just needed to get my balance and make it. I didn't. But anyway, that week, for example, I had a tip dunk in practice. I mean, like I felt good, like, yeah, I know. It was a lot of competition. And to this day, you look back at the players that were in that on that team.
Hall
And I
of
think,
Famers.
hey, I was right there, in my heyday, I was right there with everybody. But it's always the question of what's next. And so, I got to the end of my Penn State career. I have no regrets about my European career, but yeah,
The lockout affected that too, though, right?
the lockout, yes. So when I graduated was the 1998 lockout. I had offers to try out to come to the free agent camps of the Bulls, the Hawks, and I think the Supersonics at that point. But they knew there was going to be a lockout, so there was no follow-up to it. And my agent was saying, look, there's a team in Italy that's very interested in you. And here's what they're offering, which was very good money. And that started it all, my 11 years in Europe.
Yeah, and I think one of the regrets I have is no way was I good enough to play in the league, but I definitely could have played somewhere internationally, and I didn't.
Yeah, sure.
And for the experience and the travel, so that had to be obviously the basketball's good and you're playing against great players, but the cultural awakening that you must have been just priceless.
It was like my cultural awakening walking around campus with you, Brian. Yeah, I will say too, when I look back at all these different experiences, and people ask me about, hey, what was my takeaway, or what did I like? But the idea was
that. You mean this guy? That guy?
Yeah, you can see. By the way, I want you to take notice. My thigh head is still the same size.
What is still the same size?
My five head, my forehead. I still have a big forehead. I had it back then.
I couldn't talk to you without at least sharing that. Yeah. So okay, back to the culture experience.
Well, just that when people ask me about my European playing days, like I have no regrets whatsoever, because I have had so many amazing adventures and seen things and learned things. I've learned so much from that time over there about how to live life, about the way that you can live your life, because just where you grow up, people may think differently. I referred to my sleeping patterns. I am very much a big fan of the afternoon, la pausa in Italian, but the siesta in Spain, where it's just, hey, we're going to take a break this afternoon. Everybody go home and take a nap. I'm very much on board with that way of thinking. But again, also that I never knew that this was possible, but I got to meet my Lisicky and on my mom's side, my relatives. So that are
Italian. Your mom's side was Italian, right?
My mom's side is Italian. That's correct. And my dad's side is Slovak. So I got to meet them in Italy and in Slovakia. And
you played like in the hometown of your mom's relatives,
yes,
right?
Treviso, Italy is a suburb of Venice. And that's where my grandmother's family was from, Treviso. And so when you look back at it, I could have played in all those other places around Europe. And I'm not going to make a commentary about a supreme being or an ultimate reality, but how do I end up in the town? And it wasn't because I reached out to anybody. That was the team that was interested in me.
Yeah, and tell that story, because didn't Coach Dunn play, who I just talked to, by the way? He says hello. I just like not even a half hour ago. Nice. Tell that story, because that was interesting how you got the whole Italy tryout.
So, right. When I graduated, I was going to attend graduation in May and go off into the sunset and just figure out what I was going to do. Right. But again, knowing that the lockout was going to happen, I decided I was going to stay up at Penn State in the summer and work out and figure out what was going to be next. So I had graduated, all my paperwork and diploma was all finished. And so the week of graduation was also the week that the team was going to take a trip to Italy. And so again, it was in May. I was in talks with my agent, who out of the, I didn't say anything about wanting to play in Italy or anything. He just said, hey, look, there's this team in Italy, Benetton Treviso. They want you. They know who you are. They have scouts, and they want you to come over there and meet the coach and meet the GM, and just have a conversation about what your role might be on the team. And I said to my agent, oh, well, how about this? Penn State's going to Italy next month. Maybe I could go with them. And so that started me going to Coach Dunn saying, hey, Coach, I know I'm not on the team anymore, but do you think I might be able to come, hitch a ride?
Right, because you're a poor college student. It's not like you could just go buy a flight to Italy.
No, they later on in July, that summer, when I went over to officially sign my contract, they flew me over first class. So there's no big
Yes,
deal.
but that's after you try it out and they saw what they were getting.
Well, right. In person, they saw video of me and they knew who I
Right.
was. But
Right.
when I went over with Penn State, what they said was they'd like to watch you play. And so Coach Dunn was awesome. Look, they were trying to get ready for the next season. Danny was coming back from injury, et cetera. So I knew that the GM and the coach were going to be there for one game against the Italian under-22 national team. I said, Coach, can I play in this game? It's like, yeah. And so he featured me. He let me start. I scored 20 points in the first half, and that was enough. And then he didn't play me the rest of the game, which was smart. So,
right. You can't. It's not going to get any better than that. And you kind of breeze by those coaches. Those are like legendary coaches, weren't they?
Aren't
they? They are.
The coach, not Americans may not know him, but Zeljko Obradovic is the most successful international coach of all time. He's won the European Championship with like 7 different teams, and that you could say that Phil Jackson is a good or bad coach, but because he had Shaq and because he had Michael Jordan, you can maybe argue that he's not as great of a coach as you think. Obradovic, he took different types of teams to win the European Championship. I think that says a lot.
Really?
So, yeah, he was the coach. The GM was Maurizio Gherardini. And Maurizio was not the GM of the Raptors, but he eventually came over to the NBA. But he also, in Europe, he has been the GM of many championship teams. So he's very well respected. And so to that, most people don't know who those two folks are, but I know, at least from my kind of ego or, just kind of saying, you know what, 2 of the best people in the business, they wanted me. So
Yeah.
for me to take that step, and it was in the town of my grandmother's family, I was like, you know what, let's go, let's do this.
Man, you're living being from little old Allentown, you're living the dream, my friend. And I know you're one that knows that. So it's not like I'm preaching to you. You were soaking it in.
It was absolutely a dream. When I was in 8th grade, I was one of 2 in my grade that was named like Student of the Month. And so I was invited to the Key Club, or the Kiwanis Club of the Lehigh Valley. And I remember going and they asked me to speak about myself in front of these retirees that were wearing funny hats. And they said the prayer before the meal in Pennsylvania Dutch. So they were speaking in German. So again, just like a little get together where I'm 14 years old and I'm talking about myself. And I said, I'm my family and my activities, and maybe one day I'll play professional basketball. That would be my dream. This is what I said. That would be my dream. And if I don't make the NBA, maybe I'll go play in Italy. I
throw it out there. Throw it out there in the universe. And
I threw it out there. And
that's all. So when did you know it was time to like walk away?
Well, Kristen was a big part of that. Like I finally had met somebody where I thought, I could see myself hanging out with her for more than, a short time. But that my body, even as I'm sitting here, you might see me adjusting.
Yeah.
Especially when I hit age 30, like little things that bothered me for many years just got more and more bothersome. And so part of it was one, I played for coaches that were just fantastic coaches for most of my career. My last few years of playing, I played for really difficult coaches that I didn't agree with their philosophy, or I just thought they were no good at all.
Right.
They just didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
So that made it tougher to enjoy it. And so
you're plugging into that whole quality of life thing.
And I miss so many weddings and birthdays and things, not being here in the States. It wore on me a bit that I missed my grandmother's funeral, for example.
Right.
There's things that over the years I was like, you know what, is it worth it? The money was still pretty good. I had offers to go back after my final season. I said no to all of them, and that was it. And I have no regrets. Look, there's guys that are still playing that are roughly my age, and I'm like, what are you doing? Your body's your body's not going to be happy with you.
No, not at all. But so I have this picture behind me, and not just because we got to rock our mullets, but that is where you met your lovely bride is Dewey, Delaware,
Yeah,
right?
Dewey Beach, Delaware. So in 2005, I played in Poland. We lost in the Polish finals. The game 4 of best of 5 was on Tuesday. On Friday, that was the Friday of Memorial Day weekend, 2006. So again, 2005, 2006, I played in Poland. I come home. I wasn't going to go down to the beach, but before that year, I'd already been in a beach house for a few years with my friends from Penn State, some friends from home, that it was just my way of kind of catching up with everybody that I missed throughout
Right.
the year being away in Europe. So I wasn't going to go down that weekend because I was jet lagged. In Poland, they think it's very normal for everybody to have a shot glass and a bottle of vodka at a party, and you share a shot with everybody. You share a shot with every.
So you were hurt. You rolled into Dewey hurting.
So it was Wednesday night or Thursday night. So I flew home Thursday. So it must have been Wednesday night. The day after the game, we had a quick get together, all my teammates, the team president, the coach, and I'm doing shots of vodka, but I'm like, I got to go home and pack my bag. I'm going home. I want to get out of here. Send me my last paycheck. So I rolled into the Starboard on Friday afternoon with my buddies from the beach house. And shortly thereafter, my future wife, I didn't know it at the time, was walking in with her parents.
That's great.
And as you know, because you have been in that neck of the woods, a lot of the people that work at the restaurants and shops are from Eastern Europe. And so I was talking to one of our new housemates about Dewey Beach and Rehoboth and how there's a lot of Russians and Lithuanians and Eastern European employees, both men and female. But that Kristen has the kind of look of an Eastern European female, even though she has no Eastern European blood. But as she was walking in, I pointed at her and I said to this new housemate, by the way, for example, I think she's probably Russian. So he reaches across and stops her as she's walking past us and says, "Excuse me, do you speak English?" That's how I met
Dewey.
Kristen.
So wonderful.
So the picture that's behind your head, I'm wearing a mullet wig. So the next day, I was wearing that same wig and met up with her again. But that first night we talked for like 4 hours. Again, it was more than just, hey, she's a good looking girl and maybe she brought up a good looking guy. We talked about a lot of things that I felt like, man, this girl's great. But, she lives here in Phoenix and I still had some more basketball to play. But yeah, that's where we met. And long story short, eventually we started dating and we got engaged and married.
Man, I love the story. I love the fact that you found yourself there, and I often found myself there with you. Actually, last time I was there, I won an e-bike this summer. You'll be happy to know, at the Starboard. So who are the guys that you keep in contact with?
Yeah, from the basketball team?
Yeah.
Well, you're not on this group text.
Weidman was telling me about that. I may have aged out or something. I don't know.
Let's see. I think we call it the PSU hoops. Yeah, the PSU hoops. Let's see. On this text are 14 people. So most of them are former teammates, but Andy Smith is on there, for example. Our manager, deep dish.
Yes, sir. The dish.
We added Weidman because, like you, he's transgenerational.
No question.
Timeless.
No question. I mean, how can you not want that comedy on your string?
Right.
And that's great. I think it's also one of the things that I've learned that is kind of special about Penn State, besides the inter-sport relationships from different sports, is the different generations, same because we have some kind of shared experience. Even though, we don't have any national championship banners up there.
Not yet.
There is a closeness to even, someone as old as me down to some of these young bucks running around. Last two things. Number one, so what are you doing now? I mean, I know the answer. We talked about it a little bit, but your profession, how are you paying for those meals for those kids? Baird. Oh yeah. CFE, certified financial planner, changing life. Before you answer that, I will say I work a lot with financial planners, and I do think you guys are the most important, other than teachers and coaches, profession moving forward for anyone that's over 30 years old.
Yeah. So yes, I'm a certified financial planner. I've been here at Baird. Next month, it'll be 10 years. time flies. My degree was in finance at Penn State. I always thought, yeah, once I hang it up, maybe I'll stick with basketball and do like Calvin, who's on that group text. Maybe I'll go that route of scouting or front office type of idea, or I'll use my finance degree somehow or another. So yes, I got into this gig about 10 years ago. It's not easy when you first get started because you have to go find business. But if John Wooden never had good players, would he have been a great coach? I have great clients now. I finally have gotten to that point where, depending on what their pieces of their financial puzzle are, I feel like I make a positive difference for them. And so that's my mantra, to just say, hey, I can help you, whatever your situation might be. And look, it's a commoditized business. There's real estate people out there. There's pizza shops. There's mechanics. There's financial advisors out there. I just try to say, look, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be honest. I'm not a salesy type of guy, but I do feel like when I look in the mirror, I'm doing a good thing, that I'm helping people. It's not the same excitement necessarily as making a three to win the game, or making some big plays in a basketball game like I did in my career. But I enjoy it, and it gives me freedom with the family. Like I can make my schedule. I can go pick up the kids every day and get home for the holidays like we did last month. So I'm doing that. And you said you had a second question. What was the other question?
Yeah, charities that you're involved in. Any charities?
Well, I mean, from Penn State, Coaches versus Cancer was it was an easy organization to hitch a ride on. And then at a certain point, it was like, this does a lot of great stuff. I mean, Bob Perks, I remember him being a part of it. And then to hear that he had passed away, I was like, gosh, like this is exactly why it's important for people to take time out of their schedule to make time for others. I think that here in Phoenix, the food bank's been a good one. Every year we try to organize something with the local Penn State chapter to make boxes for needy families. But I mean, in terms of all that, on a weekly basis, I just try to take time out of my schedule to help people, whatever it might be. We donate clothing all the time to the church. So there's another one for you to talk about good charities.
No question. And especially your kids are growing every month. They're growing out of their clothes.
They grow out of their clothing all the time. And look, it's very nice to have family who want to give gifts to my children, but they have too much. So all the time I'm like, look, there's children that would really appreciate that toy. They would really appreciate that pair of shoes that you're not wearing, and you barely worn them, and they're not fitting you anymore. So let's just give it to, we take it to I think it's St. Jude, and then up the street, the church that's right by our house. We're always donating stuff. So I think it's not a once a year type of thing. It's a kind of it's a practice. It's a routine. Yeah,
no, I love that. I love that. And tip of the cap to you. Well, thanks for the time, man. It's always great catching up with you. Tell your lovely bride I said hello. Maybe I'll catch you in Dewey next summer.
I think you need to plan for it. It's the second week of June. Let's go.
Oh, that's my birthday.
It's always your birthday. It's always your excuse.
All right.
So look, that headband that you're wearing, it says G Unit with pink letters in that picture behind your head. Yes. I think I still have that headband hiding somewhere. So I'll bring it back out.
All right. Well, I'm not even gonna pencil it in. I'm gonna put it in pen. I need to go north anyway, and I need to retrieve my bicycle that I won. So let's plan on it.
I'll get it for you and have it ready for you. I'll drive it to wherever you're staying.
That's a deal, man. All right, brother. Take care, man.
Yeah, thank you.